afternoon, everybody. This is the Industry Day or information event for the San Jose Airport Connector Project, RFP. I am going to share my screen, the presentation here. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. It's been a pretty fun ride so far, and a lot of you have already shown interest. We've had over 130 folks sign up for this event, so really like to see this level of interest. Thanks to all we've already spoken to. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from folks about our approach, and we're really taking a forward-leaning approach from the city here to work with partners as early as possible to shape this project in such a way that the city and its partner can really get the most out of this. I'm Ramses Madhu. I'm the Division Manager of Planning Policy and Sustainability for the Department of Transportation in the City of San Jose, and the Project Manager for the project. And there we go. So today we're going to do a little introductions from some of our leadership. Then we're going to go over the project, the procurement process and our approach to it, get into your questions and our answers, and then talk about next steps. Just a quick note, everything we're talking about today is preliminary. We are still in the process of developing the RFP, so understand that any of this may change as we get to the final RFP. And we would love your input on it so that we could shape this procurement and project the best we can. I'm going to introduce a few of our leaders who are going to be saying a little bit about this project. I'm going to start off with Mayor Sam Liccardo. Mayor, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Ramses. Appreciate it. I know that it's been said more than once that politicians should really be seen and not heard. Unfortunately for all of you, I will not be seen, but I will be heard. So let me just tell you, my first involvement in Airport Connector started about 21 years ago. In my prior life, I was an attorney. I quit my job so I could jump on a Measure A campaign in the year 2000, which had a vision for bringing BART to San Jose, which of course we've partially accomplished so far. We're still got a little more to go, as well as this Airport Connector and several other projects. This was a strongly supported part of the measure by voters. Unfortunately, the dollars in Measure A were not sufficient to go build the whole thing. We've got a lot of other projects that Measure A funded. And now 21 years later, as mayor, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to see how we can get this rolling now, and really grateful to Ramses and the entire Department of Transportation team for putting us in position to do that. Let me just describe the opportunity very bluntly. Prior to the pandemic, for a period of roughly 2 to 3 years, we had the fastest growing airport of any major city in the United States. At the other end of this line, at Diridon Station, we have the largest private sector investment in Google in San Jose's history, and probably the largest private sector investment anywhere in the state of California. More than 6 million square feet, as well as 4,000 new homes and retail and a host of other amenities. Along with that, we have under construction the doubling the Adobe World headquarters in the Diridon area in downtown, and a host of other developments. J. Paul, for example, working on building another 5 million square feet. An enormous amount of investment is happening in downtown. So this project aspires to accomplish a very simple task, which is connecting those two extraordinary economic drivers, our airport and our downtown. And we think this is an opportunity to show off the best technology, the best transit that the world has to offer. After all, this is the heart of Silicon Valley, linking two critical destinations in our region. So we really appreciate your interest and your willingness to be a part of this. We think this is going to be a pretty epic journey, and we think one that generations will benefit from. So thank you for your willingness to roll up your sleeves with us. We look forward to accomplishing great things with you. Thanks, Ramses.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate your words and all the support you've given us as the project team to get this moving forward. Next, I'll introduce our director here at the Department of Transportation, John Risdo.
Thank you, Ramses, and thanks everybody for attending today. And the mayor pretty much said it all, how important this project is to the city. This is the last remaining airport in the Bay Area that does not have this type of connection. The voters, as the mayor pointed out more than once, have told us to figure out how to get it connected. So what we're looking for is a unique and innovative way to try to do this project. And that's why we're really happy with the turnout that we had for the RFI and then for today's event as well. That this is the capital of Silicon Valley, and we definitely want to look at other ways to accomplish this connection. And we think there is really some very viable and real world, real good connection possibilities out there. We're looking to engage with private sector and actually make this thing happen. So again, the mayor laid it out as to the why. Now we got to make it happen as to the how. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Director Risdo. Next, we have Drew Niemeyer from the airport.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Drew Niemeyer, one of the airport deputy directors in planning and development. And so this project presents a unique potential solution to some of the curbside congestion that we have, which was identified in a gap analysis that we had done in 2017. We're looking forward to working with the successful team, working through the technical aspects, but also improving the airport. This project will also correlate with our larger capital improvement program, which is almost on the same timeline. And so we'll be working very closely with the city and with the successful proponent. Our existing facilities where the routing is going to be feeding into the airport, we've already future-proofed those areas. There's going to be enough space for the project to fit between our existing consolidated rental car facility and our future terminal parking structures. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Niemeyer. Last, we have Deborah DeGang from VTA.
Hi, thanks, Ramses. Appreciate you inviting me to this session. I'm Deborah DeGang with VTA. I'm the Chief Planning and Programming Officer, and I'm also our CTA County Transportation Association Director. And in those roles, and our role with this is that we're really excited to be working with the city on looking at innovative ways to make this very important connection. As Mayor Liccardo pointed out, both the airport and the Diridon station area are very important destinations from a mobility perspective, both today and maybe more importantly, even more so in the future as we see both of these going. So we're excited to see ways that we as the public sector and you all as the private sector can partner together and what are some of those new and innovative ideas that we can help bring to the forefront. So thanks, Ramses.
Thank you, Ms. DeGang. I really appreciate everybody's support. It's been a real big team effort here. We've here put some folks out here talking about this project, but I will say the Office of Economic Development, our Public Works Department, our Parks Department, among many others, have been sitting at the table with us crafting the city's approach to all of this. And I'll also note that as of last week, the new regional transportation plan, Plan Bay Area 2050, was adopted. And this project was reaffirmed as a major project for the region with a price tag of around $500 million put into that plan. Right, so let's get into it. What are we talking about? I'm going to start off with the project, and then we're going to actually go back out a little bit and talk about our approach and our goals. But this effort is primarily, or first, an attempt to connect Terminal B at the airport with Diridon Station. This is our primary project segment, and we are looking for, we are now looking for folks to bid on this segment. Now, we're also very interested to see what other value adds can happen in this setup. So one, of course, is the inner airport facilities, a possibility that can come along with this. We do have to understand that these are, of course, under very different financial situations. The airport connector from Diridon to the airport in itself can have a certain type of revenue, whereas the inner airport piece is a different thing. So we're putting that in as an optional segment. We fully intend for this to be the first leg of a larger system. And so future expansion is very important to us, both in terms of the type of technologies we're bringing to the table. You all will be bringing to the table, making sure it's scalable beyond the specifics of an airport connector project. And even within this project, we could see some interesting expandability just in the routing, meaning there are some interesting places between Diridon and the Terminal B that folks may be interested in seeing connections to, such as a large shopping center, the Sharks Arena, SAP Center, Guadalupe Gardens, and other places. So what's our real goal here, right? We are working to develop a new way to build transit in the Silicon Valley. Transit in the Silicon Valley in its current form is taking a lot of time and a lot of money. We have some incredible projects being delivered right now, including the BART project and a light rail extension in East San Jose. But what we're seeing is we need more transit and more high quality transit in Silicon Valley in a much faster, quicker fashion than we're seeing before. And so part of our project here is really to see how can we approach transit projects, both from a technological perspective, but as well as a commercial perspective that allows us to expand transit quicker using this as the first leg. So again, this is really intended to be our first leg of the project, a larger project, and we're very excited to be working with you on it. All right, so what's our approach here? At a high level, in kind of plain language, one, we want to be the right public sector partner. We have already been doing our best to be as open as possible to all stakeholders who want to come talk to us, particularly on the industry side right now, to really get folks' thoughts about our approach, how we might accelerate this kind of project and getting all of that. So right up front, we are trying to work in with our potential partners and get as much engagement as we can. And secondly, as you heard from the mayor and the rest of our leadership, this support will go throughout the project, and we really are here to be a long-term partner in this. So then on the other side, what are we looking for? We're looking for the right long-term private sector partner. This is not a build and deliver project. This is a build and design, build, operate, and maintain project. So we are looking for folks who are interested in investing in the long-term project here and really developing that relationship that will allow for the full life cycle of this project. We're really focused on goals and outcome, right? So while we are excited by new technologies and new commercial and business practices that may allow us to get to new places, our ultimate purpose, of course, is to get a better transit experience and new projects out there. And so we're really looking for that private partner who can come in and help sculpt that approach. We're also trying to leverage right now favorable conditions, right? So obviously, as the mayor highlighted, we have a very fast growing downtown. We have over 25 major towers under development and various forms of development in the downtown, and that doesn't even include the massive Google project that the mayor mentioned, and the airport, which is one of the fastest growing in the country. So we have a really great base for ridership here, and we would like to see kind of use that growth and the future that allows to get this moving forward. We have really great support right now on all layers of leadership, as well as amongst stakeholders along the route. Folks are excited about this project, and we really like to push this out at the right time. And lastly, we are seeing a new layer of technology or a new form of technology coming to the market that is giving us the strong indication or strong allowing us to put forward a pretty strong hypothesis that there are significantly new ways to do transit, both from the development and construction as well as operations perspective. What does this mean more technically? All right, so what are we doing? Right, so our anticipated delivery model for this project is an RFP to award an at-risk phased pre-development agreement. We'll be working collaboratively with the developer to validate, define the project, and deliver it before entering into a long-term DPFOM. So basically, we want to get into an early agreement with a potential developer to refine the project and really get deeply into what it is. We haven't done a lot of the deeper project development on our own, as many of these projects are done. We're really here to find a partner as early as possible, so that we can work with the partner to define the project and get into those deeper questions around what the project is, the definitions, and then go get the money that we might need. We know that there's an immense amount of market knowledge out there around innovation, around technology, around the commercial structures we might use. We really want to lean into that with y'all. And so our RFP will specifically be open to folks trying to challenge the way that things are done, and challenge even the way that we write the RFP. We want you to come back with responses that say, you know, this is how we want to take on this risk. This is how we want to deliver this project. And then we believe this is the best way to commercially do it. So a few other highlights there, of course, are the types of risk transfer that we're looking for, right? We're really looking to transfer some of the risk from this project from the public in terms of project delivery, project revenue, and financing. And we believe that that will allow us to deliver a project faster and with less strings attached. And then, of course, we're trying to minimize public funding for the effort. All right. So what is this going to look like, the RFP phase? So it's going to be a single stage RFP. There will be some qualifications within the RFP, but we will not be doing an RFQ. This will be RFP to PDA. Our expectation is to release this in Q1 next year. And we are looking at about a 3-month turnaround period, open to comments about that length of time. You know, what are the main things we're going to be looking at in this RFP? One is team experience and qualifications, right? We really want to make sure folks that are coming in and trying to take this risk with us are bringing the right experience and the right team to the table. Next, we're really looking at what the actual approach is, right? So what is it? What things are we looking at? I'm going to highlight passenger-centered performance specifications. We're really going to be focusing what the system parameters are around what a passenger would experience, how much they pay, how it all, how the system will work versus subscribing to a particular technology. We are very open to many kinds of technologies, whether they be traditional or non-traditional, as long as they can offer that kind of passenger experience. Again, that's expandable or scalable to more parts of the city, for one. For two, that allow for the project to go faster in terms of construction time and hopefully be cheaper than we're used to for these kinds of projects. We are really looking to streamline this. We want this to move as fast as we possibly can. We've been developing this RFP very quickly. You know, we understand that for a lot of folks out there, moving fast is one of the most important elements of keeping the capital involved in the project. And so we really are aware of that and keeping that top of mind. All right, So what does the PDA phase look like, right? We're going to do a 2-phase pre-development agreement is our current thinking. What we'll do is select 2 out of the RFP responses, so two bidders, to go into a pre-development agreement. In that pre-development agreement, there'll be a first phase, and there we're really going to dive into testing every bit of the business case and approach that's proposed in there to see which of the 2 top bidders really offers the most value to the city and offers the most value in the long term for this project. After that, there'll be 1 selected from those 2 bidders. And at that point, we'll really get further into project development, including deeper engineering, environmental, permitting process, and all of that. So that first phase of PDA is intended to be a short phase. This is not, I know a lot of you guys know about the Sepulveda project in LA. We're not looking for that long-term two project teams competing deep into a project. What we're looking for here is probably about a 6-month first phase at most that will really give us some more time to look deeply at the business cases that are being offered for that. All right. And we are looking at a termination payment at the end of that first phase of the PDA process to get us through there and help folks gain some traction financially as they get in there. All right. So here is the kind of basic roles. This is, of course, a proposal on our part. You guys are welcome to put your teams together as you see fit. But these are the kinds of roles that we will be checking against as we look into your RFPs responses. We're looking for these key components to make sure that folks have enough experience, both in terms of managing major projects, bringing in newer technologies, if that's what's proposed. Then in the longer term, really those system operations and maintenance pieces, do we have enough wherewithal to make sure you're carrying those pieces in the long run? And of course, the contractors and design team to make sure we're really getting the project defined in the most succinct way. All right. All right, so how are we going to evaluate the RFP responses? We will be using these are the kind of big buckets that we'll be looking at in the RFP. The first 2 are kind of binary in terms of there will be some basic requirements, just compliance with administrative and submittal requirements, making sure your paperwork's in order. And 2, we will be putting in some basic qualifications around teams. Again, this is really to make sure that we're getting the cream of the crop in terms of folks who can deliver on this and have enough financial backing to make this possible. Then after that, there'll be more scale-based evaluations, looking at the project understanding and the management plan. Again, that's really important, is kind of how will you guys actually step into that piece. After that, we'll be looking at the business case. Again, this kind of been hitting on this a lot. Our business case, really, the technical feasibility of the proposal, including your initial alignment proposals. Then really looking at how are you guys going to meet those passenger-centered performance specifications. We want to make sure that that is forefront and center from day one and all the way through. And then expandability. Again, we're seeing this as the first leg of a larger system. And so the ability for your system to take on different operating parameters in different environments is going to be pretty important to us. I don't need to read everything here. You guys can read the rest. One thing that I will say is time and money are obviously equal in a lot of ways. And we are looking for different approaches to whether to have a termination payment during the RFP phase, or during the PDA phase and into the project phase. And so we're looking for y'all to propose how you would like to structure a payment like that, if you would like to have a payment like that. And then if you would, what kinds of value might we put on the table? Of course, there's monetary value, but also other types of value that the city might be able to offer to make this project require less public funds, for one, and also two, to go faster, right? Because to get some of those, the higher those public funds dollars are, the longer it'll take to get them. And so we're trying to reduce that exposure as much as possible. All right, so our preliminary schedule. We are releasing this in Q1 next year. We're going to try to do it as early as possible. We're looking for submittals in Q2. And again, we understand we want to give you guys as much time as we can while still trying to move the project as quickly as possible to make your proposals. We expect to select the preferred proposers at the end of Q2 and go to council with that initial agreement, and then select execute it in Q2, Q3 next year. After that, we'll be going into the PDA phase 1, and we expect around 90 days or so to get through that first phase. Again, you'll be getting a questionnaire. I forgot to take a note out there, but you'll be getting a questionnaire from us afterwards, asking you what your preferred amount of time is, and some thoughts on that for all this. But then we get into PDA phase 2. We are expecting that phase to take about 18 to 24 months. And that's something we're going to work out with you guys, whoever gets into that phase, see how quickly we can do it and still do it well. All right, and with that, we're going to do questions and answers. I am going to see.
Hey, Ramses, this is Colin. We've had a couple come in through the chat, namely about will we be sharing this presentation, and will we be sending out a participation sheet, an attendance sheet for partnership?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for those questions. I'm going to have to ask somebody to help me with the participants in chats. For some reason, my Zoom is failing me in terms of being able to see those windows.
Yeah,
so first, will we be sharing this presentation? Absolutely. We'll be posting this to our project website after probably later today or potentially tomorrow. We will also be sending out the participant list here as well. We'll have a follow-up email most likely tomorrow afternoon with the participation list, as well as the siren to go by. There we go. The participation list, as well as a follow-up survey with some questions that the team has for the general market on this.
Thanks. Next question is, will this be extended to the north and east or west in further stages?
Will it be, sorry, my computer is deciding to have some issues. We expect it to expand. In what way? This is something that both can be discussed during the PDA phase, as well as in the future. We do have the Stevens Creek line that has also been adopted in the Plan Bay Area process, but there's multiple jurisdictions involved there, so we can't just kind of use that just yet, but we do expect that to come up as a potential next option. There are other options moving north out of the airport towards North First Street and connecting into the light rail system that way. And there's also been some discussion about moving through downtown. In particular, there's a second Sharks facility that's right next to the south campus of our San Jose State University. So we are seeing a lot of interest from the local stakeholders to see this expanded in lots of different directions, and we're going to be open to those discussions. We are discussing, and there's a lot of logistics in this, we may have particular routes added as something like a first right of refusal as part of this RFP. That's under discussion. I would love to hear your thoughts on that in our survey, but at the moment, we can't promise anything.
Next question is, how do you define the stated ultimate goal of a better transit experience?
Yeah, great, absolutely. So we're looking for fast, frequent, and reliable, and personal safety, right? And so we're really looking at a system that is generally separated from other travel modes, and so that it is giving folks a competitive travel time and experience. We'll give you this in a more technical form in the RFP itself. But part of what's exciting us in the marketplace is that we're seeing different approaches to transit that are looking at some of these different things. The PRT and GRT models are interesting, but of course, people movers and all that are interesting as well. So anything that's giving us fast, frequent, and reliable transit, and giving folks an elevated experience that creates a competitive opportunity, so folks are not necessarily driving.
Next question, I think you already discussed this earlier, but you tell me, Ram, this is a question about second and third legs. Do we have those defined, or was that answered in your previous answer about expansion?
That's right. So that first answer should really stand for that. We don't know what those will be yet, but we do expect them to be defined over the life of the process. And we're open to teams proposing these in their RFP responses. But this project will not be for developing those other routes just yet.
Great, thanks. Next question, would you please talk some more about what you anticipate as revenue sources for the completed project? Fares, airport fees, or something else?
Right. So for the primary leg between the airport and downtown, the Diridon station, this is a revenue risk model. So we do expect fare revenue to be a primary source. And we do expect that the public will be buying into this project, helping fund construction to some degree. Again, we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. But this is a revenue risk project. Now, interterminal or interfacility transportation at the airport, that will be, if offered at all, or if you guys propose that at all, there would be some airport financing to be looked at, but we're looking for approaches to paying for that, right? Nobody expects to pay for interfacility transportation at an airport as a passenger, and so we're looking at different ways to do that. There is a bus contract out there now, and so there's some operations money on the line that can be discussed, and then there's other value that could be brought to the table, such as advertising, as well as potential for growth, particularly to the north, and that the line, that the airport piece becomes a kind of a pass-through segment, and thus the segment gets paid mostly through other means.
Thank you. Can you clarify how long the two lines are, both inside the airport and then towards the city as a connector to downtown?
It really depends on a lot of things that we can't say yet, right? It could be 3 to 4 miles between the airport and downtown. Really depends on what routing we'll take. We haven't decided on a specific route, though we do have kind of a search space for that route. And again, we'll be publishing that with the RFP. I can't say, Drew, do you know the size kind of from Terminal B up to the northern lot?
Yeah, I think it was, you mean inter airport?
Yeah.
It's under a mile.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it.
All right, so you're looking at potentially about 4 to 5 miles.
Great. And then there are 3 dots on the map that you showed earlier. adjacent to SJC, is it assumed that there will be 3 stations at the airport?
No, it's not assumed at all. So again, proposing the interfacility piece at the airport is an option, and what exactly that option would look like. We'll give some parameters in the RFP likely as to what we would like, but we know that inner terminal as well as to major facilities would be good, but we have to kind of prove out the case for that, and we're looking for you to do some work on saying what you think that is.
Thanks. Next question, is the city taking the lead on community engagement during the process?
Yeah, great question. What we'll expect is that it would be a joint effort, but that the city would be the face of the project and will be taking a lead role. But again, this is a partnership and we expect both parties to play in that. But again, we won't be putting you out there as the kind of sole public. This will be a joint effort.
All right, thanks. Next question, just so you know, we're looking at least another 20 questions here.
Great.
Will you set out the passenger performance specs in the RFP?
Yes, we will give guidance on what our expectations are around passenger experience.
Great. Is the connector alignment right-of-way part of the PDA process?
Good. We will be, we would like to see initial goes at the alignment in the RFP responses, but we will be figuring out the alignment in more depth during the PDA process as we define the project.
Great. And how do we, the city, envision the environmental review by the PDA developer or independently by us, the city?
We're still working that out. Obviously, we can't go into and do environmental review until we get near the end of the PDA process, or possibly all the way into the DBFOM agreement. So we expect the city to be the CEQA lead in terms of process. How it gets paid for is going to be the main question, and we expect that to be kind of the shared burden of the project.
Thank you. The question about the passenger performance specs, I believe you already answered. Next question is, how will expandability be evaluated and what will be the minimum thresholds for team qualifications?
Great. I can't respond to the second part of that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that you'd like to share already, Alfonso, in terms of minimum team qualifications.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Alfonso Mendez, and with Arab, and I'm part of the team that is assisting the city in this interesting project and the procurement. There are going to be some elements, as you saw in the presentation, that are speaking towards the team configuration we're envisioning, right? Probably the most important element here is the developer. We're looking for a developer-led team. The developer will be the counterparty to the city during the PDA phase, and eventually will be leading the incorporation of the project company to enter into the long-term DBFOM contract with the city. Definitely, it has to be an experienced developer in similar P3 DBFOM projects in California. But as part of that team, there's going to be an important member that is going to be the technology provider. We are envisioning these teams that are going to be responding to the RFP to be fully assembled teams where the developer is in partnership with that technological solution they're going to be submitting, and as part of that business case, that is one of the submittal requirements that the RFP is going to be containing. Of course, there are going to be an operator role, there's going to be a maintenance provider role, a contractor, and a design team, right? We're going to define that in more detail. We're going to try to be as flexible as possible in terms of allowing one single entity to play maybe more than one role. But the whole idea is to have a fully assembled team that can have all the abilities and capabilities to develop the project, right? Some of them might be actual members of the team, some of them might be consultants, right? As the team decides to assemble themselves. But again, we're going to be defining that with a little more clarity in the RFP.
Thanks, Alfonso. And then on the first question, what does expandability mean? We're still figuring out exactly how we're going to define it, but basically it'll mean something like being able to carry probably more passengers per hour than the airport connector would demand, as well as be able to deal with the more densely populated or urban environments where we're seeing more stops and integrations with more types of physical environments outside of this train station to the airport.
Thanks. Next question is, do we have any criteria around CO2 emissions and the non-use of rubber tires?
Do we have any, well, we do expect this to be electric and would like to see the lowest carbon footprint possible on the project. We haven't come up with a direct measurement of that yet, but we'll certainly have something in there. And then rubber tires versus non-rubber tires, we're open to both. Again, we're technology agnostic. We're trying to figure out what kind of technology will be the most beneficial to this project and to the potential expansion of the system. And so we're open to both. Just have to show us how that the project creates the business case to really make this work.
Thanks. Next question, is there a reason for going with a new system instead of utilizing or extending the existing VTA light rail?
Yeah, great question. In a perfect world, it'd be great to just see the light rail expand. But light rail expansions are costing between or upwards of $300 million a mile right now. That's on our East Ridge light rail system. And so part of what if someone can come and say, hey, we can just expand the light rail system and we can keep the costs down and really prove that case, we're certainly open to that. But what we have learned, and some of you may not know this, but this is the kind of step 2 or 3 in this process. We did do a request for information back in 2019, asking companies to come up with new approaches that would reduce the cost of transit building. And what we learned in there was that there are newer transportation technologies that are pushing the bounds in terms of what it costs to deliver transit projects. Things like the PRT systems and GRT systems out there, or whatever you want to call the boring company. There's a lot of interesting new approaches to transit out there that are looking like they could substantially reduce the cost of transit. Things like making the infrastructure itself, the guideways, about as dumb as possible, actually is really smart because it reduces the cost of building that infrastructure. So we are seeing some very good information that leads us to posit the strong hypothesis that new approaches to transit are possible, and that old technologies or updates to old technologies certainly are open to them. But again, the information we're seeing is saying the market is starting to offer new opportunities here, and we want to kind of play that out and see, whether those technologies themselves really can do that is one thing, and then the other part is if this is being pushed, how to say, if these new technologies are pushing the market, are we going to be able to get the older technologies and somehow kind of catch up in terms of reducing their costs as well?
Thanks. Is the RFP going to specify minimum passenger capacity requirements, for example, passengers per direction per hour?
Yes.
That was an easy one. Next question is, how many proposers will be selected to enter into the PDA phase?
The current discussion is 2.
Great. And then I'm not sure, this question just says ridership numbers, what size system?
Yeah, so I think I can answer that one. Right. So do we have ridership numbers? Yes, there is a 2017 study that will be going up on the project website probably today or tomorrow before we put up the follow-up email to this today's event that gives ridership estimates from there. They already assume BART and high-speed rail and all of that coming in, and they don't yet assume the amount of growth that we're seeing downtown, so they should be slightly conservative. But yeah, so we'll do that. What size system? Like I just said, we will be giving a basic, person per hour in each direction number in the RFP as well.
Thanks. And Randus, you can see that Brian has the presentation up now, yeah?
Good. I honestly, I cannot see anything except my all I can see is the closed captioning coming up on my screen. So please.
Wow, okay, you're flying blind. All right, well, Brian has the presentation up if you need us to pull up a slide, and I've got the chat. Next question here is, when will full environmental permitting be completed during PDA phase 2 and by who?
Right. So full environmental permitting will not be able to be done during the PDA phase, so we could start it depending on how deep we get in. We expect that to be either late in the PDA phase or early in the DBFOM phase. Who will be completing it? As I said earlier, it'll be a joint exercise. We expect to be the lead agency in portions of it. We are going to the airport and going through some FAA facilities. And so we will be having to do a NEPA as well. And so of course we won't be the lead transportation agency or the environmental agency for that. We're open to negotiating and discussing exactly which team is leading that process, but we see it as a joint venture.
Great. Will there be a period for comments on the RFP before it's final?
Interesting question. We will take that under advisement. That's a great question.
Thanks. This one says, current sponsor team members, please confirm technical, finance, etc.
Current sponsored team members. I believe that's asking who we're working with to define the RFP. Right now we have Arif is our lead consultant, Kimley Horn is a sub-consultant, and then Ashurst is our legal consultant. That's the team. Sorry, repeat the second part.
Please confirm technical / finance, etc.
I don't know how to answer that.
See, I'm going to find Paul in this long list of participants and unmute him. Maybe he can clarify.
Yeah, and if folks have questions, they want to verbally, say, raise your hand and call him and unmute you.
Yeah, Paul, if you want to unmute yourself, you can clarify.
Thanks. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
No, I think you answered the question, Ramses. It was really, Arup, Kimley Horn, Asher. So business case, technical, legal. That's great. Thanks for the answer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Pardon me all. Lost my place in line. The question about CO2 previously, it assumes that the technology is electric. So the question is actually more about energy efficiency and supply chain impact, but we have requirements around those.
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't detailed that out yet. It's something that may show up in the RFP, but I can't speak to certainty on that yet.
Okay. And will the city or airport provide any funding for the project, or will it be fully funded by farebox revenue? I think you got to most of that previously.
But I think it's an important angle on where we're coming from here, right? So we expect this project to take on as much private ownership and revenue risk as possible. But we just got this project adopted into the Plan Bay Area 2050 for a reason. We fought hard to get it in there, and we expect to get public money of some sort. And part of our selection process will be projects that can show business cases that use as little public money as possible. But we do expect public money to be part of the mix. So I just want to make that really clear. We fought really hard to get that. The big, regional transportation plans are basically pipes for putting money through. And we have a sized pipe at 500 million. We'd really like not to ask for that much. We think that that can add a lot of time and a lot of overhead to a project. So we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. And again, we will be looking at that in the business case. But we are fully here as a partner, and we expect public money to be involved in this project.
Thanks. Any thoughts on the location of a maintenance facility?
Yeah, I think it really depends on which routing you choose. There's some land along Coleman Avenue that could be used. There is, that's the best thought I have right now, but that's definitely something as you do your homework, to kind of figure out where you would like to propose a route. A maintenance facility is a great thought. It's unlikely to be in the downtown portion of the routing, considering how densely that area will be built out. But the middle of the route between the airport and downtown is the most likely place for something like that. And again, if we talk about a very early expansion to the north, there's possibly some land up there as well.
Thank you. Regarding stops competing with Express to the airport, do you envision a local and Express configuration?
Really depends on your technology, right? If we're on a system that the consist or vehicles must stop at each stop, then yeah, we would very much want an Express. Whereas if you're looking at a PRT or GRT model, those questions are totally different, right? The vehicle goes from A to B and bypasses stops that are not relevant to the riders. So yes, and we'd love to see different approaches to that question based on technology.
Thank you. Next question is, how will the city prevent, quote, competing corridors having access to the airport? For example, a transit solution from the future VTA Santa Clara station.
Well, that's a great thing that we could negotiate into our PDA. One thing we're really looking for is what are the things the public can put on the line to help this project succeed. That's a wonderful idea in terms of the kind of value the public could put into the agreement to help make this go forward. So we are definitely open to those discussions. That's not only up to us in the city, that's also up to VTA in particular, as well as potentially the city of Santa Clara. But we are very willing to discuss any ideas like that.
Great. Next question is, will the project be bound by certain constraints mandated by the city and community, such as architectural features, footprint, structural materials, station requirements, etc., or will it be open to the developer?
There'll of course be a give and take there. There's no project that doesn't have public oversight. What kind of oversight? We are doing our best to take as much of a hands-off approach to the development of this as possible while still expressing the public good. And that will likely go over, if you build an extremely ugly overhead system that wants to go through Guadalupe Gardens Park, that probably won't fly. And so we're going to have to, there's going to have to be thought put into that. But we're going to be very open to approaches on all aspects of the project. I know that's a very vague answer. We'll give what we can in the RFP and really dig into the PDA, but we do understand that every layer of requirement adds cost. And so the balancing those off is very important to us and top of mind.
Thanks. The next question is, does the RFP expect the applicants to pick a specific technology as part of the submission or explore multiple ones?
Yeah, it's a really good question that we've had a lot of conversations with potential folks on. Should you come in with a technology or do you want to explore it later? Now, we are open to both approaches. I will say the project team leans more towards a technology coming in, or at least a strong technology direction. And so we want to move this project fast. We want to understand as early as possible what the costs and infrastructure needs and everything that this project will need are. And so technology selection later in the process, while potentially a good idea, and I've heard some very good arguments that from some of you out there that that's the right way to go, does offer a new level of risk, or a different level of risk than coming in with the technology. At the same time, coming in with the technology, particularly if it's newer or just coming out of testing, offers a different type of risk, right? And so we're aware of kind of both sides of that, and we're open to both. But I will say so far we're seeing a lot of benefit to knowing what the technology we'd be working with early on is, because technology does define the parameters and costs around what the infrastructure is a great deal. And so, yeah, so we're playing those different things off each other. And again, we see our job is to be as open as possible to get the right project. That's why we're really going to be focusing on performance metrics versus dictating technology and all that. But I think I'm trying to share our thinking as well here.
Great. You've talked a bit about public funding opportunities. This is a question asked 12 minutes ago. So are there any other public funding opportunities that you haven't discussed that we're pursuing?
We are sitting on crossed fingers for the Democrats in Washington D.C. to get the infrastructure bill through. There are quite a few pots in that bill that are potential sources that could go through the Plan Bay Area pipes that were just set up. There is potential some local funding and other, there's discussion of a regional mega transit measure. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of different sources. There's also state money. There's a lot of focus on transit growth in the newer budgets. So kind of looking state and federal and potentially kind of regional/local as well.
Thanks. Will the system capacity be pass-fail or scored within a minimum requirement?
It's a good question. This is a draft response. There's going to be a minimum needed, and there's going to be a need to be able to expand that for scalability purposes. So I think the answer is a binary with a scale thereafter.
Great. Is there an emphasis on project experience being in California, or are similar P3 DBFOM projects in other parts of the country also relevant?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, right? Because California does offer us all a very specific context in which we're trying to figure these things out. So we definitely value California experience, but we are not set on California experience, particularly other American experiences, but also international experiences with a team that knows how to translate that to a local context or other potentials. Yeah, I mean, knowledge of the California legal and regulatory environment is most certainly a bonus on any team.
Thank you. Will the city set fares or a range of acceptable fares?
That's a very, very important and good question. What we have discussed so far in the project team is that there would be basic parameters around a few different things. One, the fare system, not the fare dollars, but the fare system would need to integrate with the regional fare system. That's the Clipper card as well. Yeah, that's the kind of fare medium and all that. So we need to be integrated to that. Two, there is a means tested fare program that's coming out of MTC, and we would require that this project cooperate with that project. Now, what about just general fares? We want to be as open to those fares rising with the needs of the project while still balancing off against real world competition, right? So the last thing we want is Uber and Lyft to be cheaper than this. And so I think we haven't exactly articulated how we want to put it out there, but we can't have a $12 fare between downtown and the airport, and that's just a random number. I just need to say there's going to be bounds exactly how to express that, where we are trying to keep as open to that as possible, while we're more interested in controlling for equity concerns, and allowing kind of the market forces to make the overall system work.
Thank you. Have you done any value for money studies to show that this connector is financially sustainable as a user-based supported model without funding subsidies?
Right. We've done basic kind of project analysis in the 2017 study I mentioned. We haven't done the deeper analysis. We are looking forward to working with your guys' business plans to see how that plays out.
Thank you. Considering this is a private project, is there a thought on ridership guaranteed by the public side?
We're not looking for a ridership guarantee model. This is a revenue risk model.
Thank you. Has the city?
I will add a caveat there, that on the airport side, in particular circumstances, that could be discussed with, again, the value of the current bus operations being the backstop of that.
Thanks. Has the city established MOUs with any other stakeholders?
Not yet. We are working with all of the major landholders along the potential route, and having them write letters expressing their interests, whether they be, hey, stay away from us, to, hey, we want you to integrate and give us a stop, and the like along it. So, but we have, and those letters, ones we get, will be appendicized to the RFP itself.
Thank you. This question is about, do we have plans to submit applications for funding from the state or feds? And if so, what's the plan? What are the amounts? You touched on that a bit. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll just say, we'll be working with you on that as we define the project. It'll be a joint venture of which we will be creating our investment or our requests out to the public together.
Thanks. Question about whether we're going to post the recording of this meeting. I think we are, correct?
Yes, our expectation. Yeah, we're recording this. Will we post it? I think so. Yeah.
Thanks. Is the airport able to give right of way to the project?
There's the giving away of right of way is one of the values that the city is bringing to the table. Giving away isn't the right term, but that's part of the value that we're bringing over as public right of way. The specifics of that will be laid out more clearly in the RFP.
Thank you. Is the city firm on revenue payments as opposed to availability payments?
We prefer a revenue model. We're open to you proposing business models otherwise, but in general, we are leaning pretty heavily towards revenue risk.
Great. Is transit-oriented development potentially part of the project, or is it necessarily a standalone piece of infrastructure?
It's a really great question, and I think in the downtown area, there isn't really any more land, I don't think, for a project to grow on that, right? Because so the basic question there is, can some revenue be gained on a land use deal on top of the transit piece? I could see some creative parties working along Coleman Avenue to get some of those properties built up a bit more, though they are right in the landing path of the airport. And so there's not much density you can build there, but there's some. So that is not part of our thinking at the moment. In terms of, we've definitely thought about it, but we haven't structured it into the RFP. But it could offer opportunity, right? Creating links to a land use property of your own devising could certainly add value.
Thank you. Would the city consider the O&M contracts rolling on separate durations? Traditionally, long duration O&M contracts carry substantial risk budgets carried into the financing models.
Again, we're not sure if this will be called a franchise, but this is more of a franchise model. So the contract for O&M won't necessarily be with the city, but with the power that is this piece. And so it depends on how you think about that, right? And how that gets structured. Yeah, absolutely. The O&M costs are long running costs. We are very much willing to offer a pretty long-term franchise to the service to help mitigate that over the long term. I don't know, Alfonso, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely, Rances. Thank you. Let me just turn my camera on. I think that in general, the idea we have in mind initially is that the cornerstone of the approach we're going to be taking is the market risk revenue model, right? Based on that, any sort of case that you can develop around that model, right? Where even there might be a decoupling of the O&M contract vis-a-vis the long-term design build finance, that could be considered, right? It's part of your business case. It's part of showcasing that feasibility of the approach you're going to be taking to deliver this, under the assumption that we're going to be relying primarily on that revenue risk. And secondarily, as Rances mentioned before, we're going to be potentially tapping with some public funding, complementing that. That public funding might have different forms, different ways. Could be a milestone payment. There might be a component of gradual payments over time. But we don't know yet, right? We don't know yet because we don't really know how much public funding there's going to be, and we don't really know how big is your funding gap as per the approach you're going to be taking, right? I don't know if that helped with the clarification of that particular question.
Thanks, Alfonso.
Great, thank you. What level of evaluation will be posed on passenger experience or wow factor innovations?
Very little on wow factor innovations. We are focused on producing the project that gives us the best value for producing more passengers on the system. So I don't know if that was tongue in cheek or not, but where wow factor is fun and helps us kind of get attention on this, but that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in transit that can be delivered faster at a cheaper price and give folks a better experience.
Great. Next question, is the FAA aware of this project and have they indicated any acceptance or restrictions?
Right. Wonderful question. We'll be meeting with the FAA later this week, actually. They're generally aware of the project, and we have not gotten a deep read from them so far, but we'll certainly be broadcasting what that is along with the RFP.
Thanks. And have you established any SBE/MBE goals?
Unfortunately, don't know what those acronyms are.
I believe it's small business enterprise, minority owned business enterprise.
Oh, thank you. Of course, of course. The City of San Jose does consider both of those metrics in our any procurement, and so local businesses and minor businesses do get a leg up as an added percentage of our overall weighting of selection.
All right, and this is the last question I've got on the list for now. Will the RFP scoring include more points for more stations or stops?
Yeah, well, we definitely like the idea of more stops. We do think that's part of adding value to the system. How we're going to score it, I don't know yet, but I do think that we haven't kind of figured out exactly how to tweak that. But we've seen a few folks really say, hey, we want to propose some intermittent stops between our primary the primary goal of getting terminal B to Diridon. And so we are looking for ways to score that that are appropriate. But I will say again, this is draft. The RFP isn't out yet, but we are leaning towards adding points to support that. and I was just saying, in the end, what we're looking for is a larger system, and particularly a system that allows more places to be connected, particularly to downtown, right? It can become a way out of downtown into some areas that aren't well connected yet. And so the more connection we can create into those areas, the better, right? So, one place we haven't talked to yet, and this is total conjecture, but, hey, look at where the earthquakes play over at PayPal Park. It is deeply disconnected from the rest of San Jose downtown by any other means than automobile. And so, that could be a beautiful stop. Same with Guadalupe Gardens and things like that. So there are definitely some big benefits to starting to create that larger network right away.
We got another one in the chat. Does speed of transit matter? And is there a minimum, and will scoring be higher for faster?
Yeah, I think speed of connection versus like speed of vehicle, right? A vehicle that's traveling at 35 miles an hour the entire time from leaving its station to getting to its station, versus a vehicle that can get up to 60 miles an hour but only gets there for if that, because it's stopping at every stop, right? So again, it's going to be about speed of connection versus speed of vehicle. We haven't delineated exactly how we'd express that, but it is something we are interested in.
That was the last question in the chat. I don't see any hands raised. New question in the chat. Has the city determined a minimum level of service, like percentage?
In terms of what? In terms of passenger throughput or speed or what is that?
Let me go find Tony and unmute. We're allowed to unmute. Let's see if we can get some clarification. All right, Tony, I've allowed you to talk. If you unmute yourself, can you clarify?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, what I meant by level of service was, interruptions or breakdowns or anything like that. Usually it's in the 90s, right, for services, but there's a big difference whether it's 92 or 96 or whatever the case is. I mean, it puts a onerous cost on the system.
Yeah, we don't have a specific number yet, but we're definitely aware of that concern. Yeah, we don't have a specific number yet.
Thanks. We have another hand raised. I'm going to unmute you. Kwan, go ahead. Kwan, you got to unmute yourself. I think you should be able to hit the mute button and talk, Kwan. We can't hear you right now. All right, let's maybe come back. We've got another question in the chat. Is the team happy to meet and greet with the private sector in person to discuss the project?
Yeah, so until our cone of silence goes down around the RFP, we are very open to as many conversations as we can fit into our schedules. We've been having at least 3 of them a week for the last few months. So I was very happy to do that. Please reach out to me directly. My email will be in the follow-up that we'll be sending out if you don't already have it. So yes, are we willing to meet in person? We'd like to meet on Zoom as much as possible just for efficiency's sake, but some in-person meetings are fine as well. And then to make it clear, during the RFP process, we will be taking 2 formal meetings during the process, one looking at technicals and another one looking at the commercial side of bids.
Great. Another question in the chat is, what criteria of the RFP scoring will have the greatest weight?
I mean, I'm going to say passenger experience and then cost. But again, that's draft. We're still kind of working that out.
We got no other questions in the chat, and I don't see any hands raised right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more. Brian, I think you're sharing your screen. I can't see anything on the screen right now, but could you go to the first next step slides then? And tell me when it's up.
Next steps is up.
All right. Okay. We have put together a list of questions that the project team is interested in hearing from you on. I think you've heard kind of some of the tenor of those questions, particularly around how to structure things like termination payments and other pieces of the project like that, and timeframes, and what value can the public bring to the process. So we'll be putting a link to that survey out by this Friday. I'm hoping I can get it out by tomorrow. And that would include, that email will include a link, hopefully to the recording. It depends on how fast the recording comes out of the cloud system with Zoom, the survey, a quick note about this, as well as the registration list. And then, yeah, all answers will be treated according to the city's confidentiality information processes, which means, you know, we will, if they're requested through PRA or something like that, it will go out. Let's go to the next step slide. Tell me when it's up.
It's up.
Thank you. Okay. There we go. So we will be making the contact list details available of everybody who participated. Last I saw, there were over 140 folks who showed up, so that's pretty incredible. If you would like your information not to be shared, please tell me by tomorrow morning, and my email is there. Please write that down and send me an email saying you don't want your information shared. We're very happy to respect that. But then we'll be sending out the list on Friday in the email like I just talked about. All right, give folks another minute to think on any questions that come up. Otherwise, we'll say thank you very much. We've got a incredibly exciting project here, a real chance to take the market in a new direction in a pretty valuable market here. And we're looking for the partners who see the value here, who are looking to invest in the long term. Yeah, we've very much enjoyed the contact with the market so far. We very much will be looking to continue to interact with everybody as long as we can. Yeah, any questions come up, Colin?
Nope, nothing new.
All right. Okay, everybody. A huge thanks from the project team for all of you taking this time to come meet with us and give us your questions and let us tell you a little bit more about this project. And again, please reach out to me, whether you want to meet and talk about the project or get your contact information off that list. And with that, we will say goodbye.